Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we bring you Congress in context.
Glad to be here.
This week, we looked through your sources, and honestly, the legislative agenda feels less like straightforward policy work and more like, well, a high-stakes standoff. You've got these incredibly narrow majorities and some major deadlines breathing down everyone's necks.
That's definitely the picture the sources paint. Our job today, really, is to cut through that noise and give you the essential takeaways from a week that was really dominated by three big conflicts.
Okay, what are they?
First, a really polarized fight over energy infrastructure. Second, this dark shadow of political violence and the arguments about free speech that followed. And third, the ticking clock on a potential government shutdown. It's getting pretty urgent.
Right. Okay, let's dig into that first one, the energy policy battle. You said polarized, and the votes really show it. The House looked at three key energy bills under House Resolution 707. And every single one passed by just a handful of votes. We're talking 217 to 209 or 216 to 206. It just seems hard to build lasting national policy on foundations that shaky, purely partisan.
It really highlights how much Congress seems to be talking past each other, especially on big things like infrastructure. So let's take the first bill, H.R. 315. That's the National Coal Council Reestablishment Act.
Okay.
On the surface, it sounds kind of administrative. It wants to bring back this federal advisory group within the Department of Energy. The previous administration got rid of it.
And the argument for bringing it back?
Proponents were saying, look, we need this specialized expertise on coal. They argued it's important for energy stability and also to push back against what they see as politically motivated environmental lawsuits.
Yeah.
They're basically trying to undo something the Biden administration did and restore something from June 2025 under Trump.
But the critics didn't mince words, did they?
No, not at all. They basically called the whole thing completely meaningless, just a waste of time, given the current situation.
What was their reasoning?
They pointed out that coal is just getting more expensive, 28% pricier than 4 years ago. And they argued, well, if Congress really wants to help the coal industry, maybe focus on something real, like fixing the solvency of the Black Lung Disability Trust Fund, not, creating another advisory council.
That's a pretty sharp contrast. It frames it as, is this about symbolism, like winning the quote-unquote war on coal, or is it about actually helping the people involved?
Exactly. It shifts the focus strategically. Are we talking optics or miners' welfare?
Okay, moving to the next one. H.R. 10047, the GRI Power Act. That stands for Guaranteeing Reliability Through the Interconnection of Dispatchable Power Act. Quite a mouthful.
It is. This one requires FERC, that's the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, to create rules to fast-track certain kinds of power projects, specifically critical baseload or dispatchable power.
So bypassing the normal waiting list, the interconnection queues?
Right. Those queues can take years. This is about getting certain generators connected much faster.
And the argument for doing that?
This is where you see some interesting strategic arguments pop up. Proponents say it's absolutely essential for grid reliability. And they're citing this accelerating demand, linking it specifically to what they're calling the AI race with China.
Wait, the AI race, how does that connect?
Their argument is that AI needs huge amounts of constant, stable power, baseload power. And they're saying without fast-tracking sources like natural gas, the U.S. could fall behind China because our grid infrastructure can't keep up. Those delays cost millions, they argue.
I want to pause on that. Is the grid really driving this push for baseload, or is the whole AI arms race thing being used as like a convenient hook to push through projects using older fuel types?
That is exactly the question opponents are asking. They're flat out accusing the bill of giving a fast pass to big oil and gas. They argue it lets grid operators basically discriminate against cleaner and often cheaper renewable options like solar and wind. And they say prioritizing baseload this way will just end up costing consumers more by favoring, dirtier, older technology. Their point is that realistically, most new electricity growth is coming from clean energy, and this bill seems designed to slow that down.
Okay. And the third energy bill in this package?
That was H.R. 362, the Promoting Cross-Border Energy Infrastructure Act. This one tries to set up a standard process, they call it a certificate of crossing, for permitting energy infrastructure like oil pipelines, gas pipelines, electricity lines that go across international borders.
Why the need for a new process?
Supporters frame it as just common sense. They say the current process is way too unpredictable, gets bogged down by presidents changing the rules with executive orders. They argue this new process would strengthen American energy security, protect jobs, streamline things.
But critics weren't buying that either.
No. Some argued the bill's kind of irrelevant now, pointing out that big projects like the Keystone Pipeline have been dead for 4 years anyway. But the bigger worry was that it would basically gut the federal government's ability to review the environmental impact.
And there was another concern, too, right, about the State Department.
Yes, exactly. The worry is that by removing the State Department's sign-off, it could make it much easier to export huge amounts of liquefied natural gas, LNG, especially to Mexico.
Which could then drive up gas prices here in the U.S. for regular consumers.
That's the fear. So it boils down to this conflict. Are we prioritizing American leadership in global energy through exports, or are we prioritizing domestic energy security and keeping prices affordable here at home?
That kind of deep divide over something as fundamental as power, it seems to echo the political tensions that, well, tragically spilled over into violence this week. There was a serious discussion about the political assassination of Charlie Kirk in Utah last week.
Yeah, a horrific event.
Yeah.
And it led to immediate action in Congress. SRES 403 was introduced to condemn the attack and propose making October 14, 2025, a national day of remembrance.
And the sources noted this isn't happening in a vacuum. There was the active shooter at Evergreen High School, attempts on Governor Josh Shapiro's house, the shooting of Democratic lawmakers Melissa Hortman and John Hoffman.
Right. It paints a disturbing picture of recent political violence.
Now, after the condemnations, the perspectives got complicated fast. Everyone agreed the violence itself is, completely against democratic principles. But lawmakers immediately started pointing fingers about the causes. The source material mentioned accusations flying back and forth, some saying hate and fear being deliberately stoked online. And then counterclaims from some conservative lawmakers that institutions, they specifically named the Southern Poverty Law Center, are targeting them, putting a sort of figurative target on their backs.
And there was a really fascinating, maybe chilling data point mentioned in the sources about an unintended consequence. Speaker Johnson apparently noted that after Kirk's assassination, Turning Point USA got requests from over 50,000 people wanting to start new campus chapters.
Wow, 50,000.
Yeah. It suggests that out of this tragedy, that particular movement might actually be gaining significant, maybe even radical momentum. It's a really sobering indicator of just how polarized things are.
That really is stark. Okay, shifting gears slightly, but still related to political climate. There was also a tense debate about the First Amendment, not directly about violence, but about government power potentially being used to stifle speech. This involved the FCC chairman, Brennan Carr.
That's right. The Senate debated a resolution, S-Res 408, which actually called for Carr's resignation.
Why? What was the allegation?
The core claim is that Carr publicly threatened ABC, Disney, and its affiliates because of a monologue by the comedian Jimmy Kimmel. The alleged threat used language like, we can do this the easy way or the hard way.
And Senate Democrats saw that as intimidation.
They did. They basically framed it as using the FCC's regulatory power like something out of The Godfather, a threat designed to chill speech that's protected by the First Amendment.
Does the FCC even have the authority to regulate, say, a comedian's monologue content like that, even if the power he's hinting at is just administrative?
Well, that's the tricky part. The FCC probably doesn't have direct power over the content of Kimmel's monologue itself.
Yeah.
But the power they do wield is significant and subtle.
How so?
Think about things like broadcast license renewals, rules about spectrum allocation. The agency has huge regulatory leverage over networks and their local affiliate stations. So the fear isn't necessarily direct censorship of a joke. It's the fear that the agency could use its broader powers to harass or penalize the network or its affiliates later on.
Ah, so just the threat or the implication is enough to make networks think twice, to self-censor?
That's precisely the argument Senate Democrats made. They said, even implying you might use regulatory power to punish speech is a direct attack on the free press and constitutional rights.
This feeling of instability, it seems to be affecting other key government institutions, too. We saw reports raising serious concerns about the intelligence community, specifically under D&I Gabbard.
Yeah, the sources detailed what they called systemic undermining. This included things like dismissing leaders at the National Intelligence Council, the NIC, because their assessments, like one on the Venezuelan Tren de Aragua gang, apparently didn't match the desired political story.
And wasn't there something about the Defense Intelligence Agency, too?
Yes, the DIA. The general leading it was reportedly forced out after his agency produced an assessment about Iran's nuclear program that contradicted what the president was claiming.
So the worry is that intelligence analysis is being pushed to fit politics.
Exactly. The fear is it damages morale and sends a really dangerous message. Don't tell the truth if the boss won't like it. That fundamentally erodes the purpose of having an independent intelligence community.
And it sounds like scientific research might be facing similar pressures, a potential crisis of objectivity there too.
That's what the sources suggest. There was criticism about funding cuts to cancer research at the National Cancer Institute, reports of scientists being fired at the NIH, and even the termination of the NIH's Minority Biomedical Research Support Program.
Fired scientists and research being censored.
Some scientists reported exactly that research being censored, critical data sets just disappearing. And they're sounding the alarm, warning explicitly that China is pulling way ahead of the U.S. in R&D.
If you connect the dots there, the energy debate talks about competing with China on AI, but if our own scientific institutions are being undermined.
It raises serious questions, doesn't it? The sources really emphasize that scientific objectivity and political independence are crucial for American competitiveness, yet these vital institutions seem to be getting destabilized from the inside.
Okay, let's pivot now to the crisis that's looming just 2 weeks away. The government shutdown deadline. If the energy debate was ideological, this feels intensely practical, potentially hitting every American very quickly. And it seems centered on the fallout from the Trump administration's One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
Yeah, opponents have consistently called that bill a big, ugly mess. And the main reason is this ticking time bomb it planted under health care in the U.S.
How so?
Well, the bill basically eliminated $990 billion in planned restorations for Medicaid and the Children's Health Insurance Program, CHIP. Because that money wasn't put back, the consequence is that about 15 million Americans are now facing the loss of their health insurance coverage.
15 million people potentially losing coverage. That's huge.
It's catastrophic. But wait, there's more. On top of that, the subsidies from the Affordable Care Act, the ACA subsidies that help working and middle-class folks afford their monthly insurance premiums, those are also set to expire.
And the impact of that.
We're talking about 20 million people facing massive premium hikes. The average increase is estimated at a staggering 75%. That's a certain huge financial shock hitting millions of families.
Okay, so massive healthcare impacts. But how does this directly connect to the shutdown threat? There must be a budget mechanism at play.
There is. And you need to understand this to really get the shutdown danger. That big, beautiful bill added about $4.1 trillion to the national debt.
Right.
Now, there's a law called the Statutory Pay-As-You-Go Act, or PA-GO. It's basically designed as a budget rule to force Congress to offset new spending so it doesn't blow up the debt.
Okay, PA-GO, how does it work here?
Because that bill added so much debt, PA-GO automatically triggers mandatory across-the-board spending cuts to try and claw some of back. And in this case, the automatic cuts hitting Medicare are estimated to be around $500 billion.
$500 billion cut from Medicare, automatically.
Automatically. Unless Congress specifically acts to waive the PA-GO rules when they pass a funding bill.
So if Congress just passes a standard stopgap funding bill, a continuing resolution, without addressing PA-GO, Medicare gets slashed by $500 billion in just a few weeks. That sounds like a political tripwire.
It is absolutely a political tripwire. And Democrats are making it very clear. They will not vote for any funding bill, continuing resolution, full budget, whatever, that allows those mandatory PA-GO cuts to Medicare to happen.
Which sets up the core standoff for the shutdown deadline.
Exactly. It's not just a fight over future spending levels. It's about dealing with the mandated consequences of past legislative choices that are now coming due.
Wow. Okay, so while that shutdown threat hangs over everything, Congress did actually introduce some significant legislation trying to address another major crisis, the national housing shortage. That's H.R. 5125, the Renewing Opportunity in the American Dream to Housing Act of 2025.
Yeah, this looks like a pretty comprehensive package. The core idea seems to be tackling the housing affordability crisis from multiple angles at once. It's trying to pull three main levers, basically.
Okay, what's the first lever?
First, it includes something called the Whole Home Repairs Act. That focuses on providing funds to fix up existing homes, making them more affordable and accessible, especially for lower-income homeowners or people with disabilities, keep existing stock usable.
Makes sense. What's the second lever?
Second is boosting supply through the Housing Supply Expansion Act. This piece actually changes the definition of manufactured housing. It would allow homes built without a permanent steel chassis underneath to qualify, which could potentially make more types of factory-built homes eligible for financing and placement, maybe boosting overall production.
Interesting. And the third lever?
The third lever is about financing and local rules. It includes the Multifamily Loan Limit Modernization Act, aiming to increase the limits for FHA loans on multifamily properties, hopefully spurring more apartment construction. And then there's the Housing Supply Frameworks Act, which tries to tackle restrictive local zoning regulations that often prevent denser housing from being built.
So repairs, boosting new types of supply, and tackling financing and zoning. It sounds like a pretty wide-ranging effort to chip away at what is just a massive national problem.
It definitely seems ambitious in scope, trying to hit the problem from several directions.
All right, as we start to wrap up this deep dive, let's quickly remind you, the listener, how you can keep tabs on all this. You can find the bills we talked about, like H.R. 3062 on cross-border energy, or the big housing bill, H.R. 5125. Just go to congress.gov.
And contacting your representatives is always important, but maybe especially now with that shutdown deadline looming and the PA-WICO issue forcing decisions.
Absolutely. What's coming up next that people should watch?
Well, keep an eye on the Senate. There's a crucial cloture vote pending on the nomination of Michael G. Waltz to be the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. That's significant. And committee work continues across the board. Hearings scheduled on everything from USDA rural development programs, seniors' access to new medical technologies, the future of fusion power, which is fascinating, and also continued oversight of the District of Columbia, a really broad range.
So we've covered a lot. Intense polarization on energy policy, this deeply troubling rise in political violence alongside critical debates on free speech and government power, and of course the huge budget cliffhanger facing healthcare because of expiring subsidies and that PA trigger. What's the big picture takeaway here?
I think the sources really show this profound tension playing out in Washington right now. It's a clash between, ideological purity, sticking to your principles no matter what, and practical governance, actually making the government function.
Do you hold the line even if it means a shutdown that hurts people? Or do you compromise even if it means giving ground on something you believe in?
That seems to be the central dilemma.
So the provocative thought we want to leave you with this week, drawing on all these competing priorities we've discussed, is this. If the big national goal is maintaining American leadership, think about winning that AI race they mentioned in the energy debate. For instance, can the U.S. really afford to sacrifice long-term stability at home? Can we risk major disruptions in crucial areas like healthcare access or energy security just for short-term political wins?
Or, looking at it from the other side, is the absolute defense of core constitutional rights and the integrity of our institutions. Things like free speech, objective science, independent intelligence, is that the essential foundation? The prerequisite you can't compromise on, no matter the cost, because without it, no future progress is really possible.
It's a tough balance and something to definitely reflect on as you watch these legislative fights continue in the coming weeks.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Congress in Context. We really appreciate you sharing your sources and your time with us.
Until next time.